On today's show, Spider-Man gets thirsty. We have some new tunes coming your way for Aladdin, and Slenderman could have been chubbier. All that and more. Movie Talk starts right now. Speaking of chubby.
Woo.
Speaking of chubby, had a Biggest Loser moment at the gym today.
Oh, yeah?
I had my weigh in, and I was thinking I'm going to be like around 175, 176. 183 pounds fat, this guy.
Nice.
180. No, it's not good. It's not good. It's
muscle.
That's what I told. That's what I told the trainer, and he's like, "Dude, I love you. You don't put muscle weight on that fast." So probably starting getting these.
I did want to say there's a Carl's Jr. thing next to you. Maybe. But I'm no nutritionist. But
look, you've been listening to too many podcasts where they solve mysteries and connect the dots. That is Mark Reilly over there. Here is Perri Nemiroff. She is the mother of Dewey, or Dewey's the father of her. I'm not sure how that relationship works, but we have a great show for you guys today. This is why I'm dressed down. It's because I went to the gym. But fun fact is that I'm actually better dressed. I have jeans and shoes on, which usually I have neither when I'm doing this very program. Whole lot of fun stuff here today. And we kick off with something that really went across my desk. It was in a fast and furious fashion, and then I get to the studio and Perri's like, you got to watch this video, you got to check this thing out, the internet's ranting and raving about it. We could have another villain possibly in Spider-Man Far From Home if Tom Holland's never-ending Instagram vids are to be believed, and I want to give this charity a shout out too. So Tom Holland is sponsoring a charitable campaign. It's going to reward the winner with a trip to the set of Spider-Man Far From Home. The donations go towards the Brothers Trust and the Edward Charles Foundation, so it's a win-win, and I'm glad I could give them some pub. But on the Spider-Man side of things, Holland was making a video and he was joking about how now his stunt double, who was playing Peter Parker in the scene, is about to get blasted with a lot of water. And then everybody started going crazy. Oh, he's getting blasted with a lot of water. This has to be HydroMan's work. Yes, we could have another villain joining the return of Vulture, Mysterio, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. HydroMan could be in Spider-Man Far From Home. Will he be in the movie? Should he be in the movie? And I want to calm everybody's fears right now. I don't think that HydroMan is going to be in the movie, but if he was, Morris Bench is the character's day name. I think that we're going to be just fine, because I think that you have to give the MCU more than Sony, but give both of these production studios credit on learning the lessons from past failures in the world of Spider-Man, where we saw Spider-Man 3 get bloated. One of the reasons is because there's too many villains. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 got bloated because there was too many villains. There have been comic book movies that have used multiple villains that have been good. I know nobody wants to believe that because we tend to think about Batman Forever or Batman and Robin. The Dark Knight. Dark Knight. Considered to be the best comic book movie of all time, not by me personally, but it's a great movie. Batman Returns had multiple villains. There's movies that utilize multiple villains. Superman 2 had multiple villains, and that's considered probably the best Superman movie in that series. So, Reilly, when you hear this news, I would like your take on whether you think HydroMan is going to appear or whether we can surmise that from a video. But let's extrapolate that into the conversation of, do you think that this is Spider-Man just making the same mistakes that we've seen these movies do before, or that they have finally learned their lesson?
Without knowing the context, I don't know if they're making the mistake, but I could also do one over on the internet, and assuming that this is HydroMan, that Mysterio is the villain, a master of illusion. Could he have maybe conjured this water?
The water could be anywhere. I mean, look, he battled water in the first one.
Could Mysterio have thrown a bunch of water at Peter Parker in an illusionary sense that in real time you have to film it, you have practical effects, you have to splash him off, and then does Peter Parker go, and he's dry, and it was a master of illusion? I mean, I can do it too, internet, and I'm telling you right now, that's probably Mysterio. That's my 2 cents. Now, falling into the same pitfalls of, say, a Spider-Man 3, if it's the MCU, I have faith in what they do. They know they when we know about the story with Sony and Marvel splitting the production and doing this, is that Marvel, the MCU, has a lot of creative input. They really want to make sure that it's following in line with their creative architecture of the MCU. So I trust that. If they say we want, and let's say it's HydroMan, sure. He's maybe an early villain, has a fight with Spider-Man in the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, and Spider-Man saves the day, and HydroMan goes to jail. That could be one way to do it. I trust MCU. I trust that if it's HydroMan, they have a very good reason for putting him in there. But my money's on Mysterio just kind of noodling around with Peter Parker's mind.
Yeah, Perry, I think the fear that a lot of fans have is that you're thinking about the Sony verse and what Sony wants to do with their standalone Spider-Man movies or wherever they go after the events of Avengers Infinity War 4. So if you look at them just trying to plant new villains, wouldn't you think that this would be Sony making standalone movies and then seeing if Marvel wants them in there along the lines of a Venom or a Silver and Black, more so than the MCU being like, yeah, sure, use our movie for these testing grounds, and then we'll throw them a standalone movie if the fans respond to them.
Yeah, that's not happening with how much creative control Marvel has over this movie. I just love the visual of this video going up on Instagram, and the first person who sees it Googles Spider-Man, water, villain, and this one comes up, and oh my God, he's in the movie too, because I think that's a little bit of a stretch to jump from that video to that. I mean, Reilly, your reasoning sounds perfectly sound to me, and I don't know, there's destruction in these movies. Who knows? Maybe there's like a tall piece of famous architecture that topples over and splashes him. I don't know. There's a million reasons, but
yeah,
I really just enjoy Tom Holland's presence on Instagram. You know what never took off that should have? Have you ever done a moving selfie? That's what this reminded me of. That was like the hottest thing for a couple seconds, where you would stand there super still, like you were taking a selfie of yourself, knowing that something crazy was going to happen behind you, and you would just stand there smiling, and all of a sudden the thing would happen.
No,
That's
no
like
one ever did that. That's like a fun challenge for the office.
That sounds like an internet sensation ready to happen.
Well,
right?
I tried to start that sensation and no one picked up on it. I didn't try to start it. Someone told me to do it, but I had a really funny one time and nobody else did it after that. I think I ruined it.
Could have a whole lot of moving selfies if indeed we get all these villains into Spider-Man Far From Home, but I don't think it really matters either way, but we do want the story to focus on Spider-Man. Is that right? Or would we rather see this movie be dominated by Mysterio in the same way that The Dark Knight was more memorable because of the Joker than it was for anything Batman did?
It'd be an interesting thing to play around with, I think, but that doesn't seem to be the direction they're going with the Spider-Man movies. I mean, more so than anything, I'm just taking a cue from what we just got in something like, let's say, Avengers Infinity War, where there was so much going on that in the next few movies, and this is just my personal preference, I want them to stay focused, and I really do want to see, now that we got that first movie with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, let's add another chapter to his life. And I imagine that given whatever will happen in Avengers 4, there's going to be a lot going on in his life, and I would kind of rather sit with him. And, he's obviously going to have a big villain to go up against, but I want to take the time to kind of breathe and understand what's going through his head. And I don't really think you leave the door wide open enough for that if you have multiple villains.
Yeah, and Reilly, the other issue with Spider-Man that's different than a lot of superheroes that you get is that if you have the first movie that's setting up a character that's a superhero, the second movie you really do need to have some sort of new villain presence to focus on, because now we know who the superhero is, and usually superheroes are adults by the time they become superheroes. Spider-Man is a different case because he's still matriculating, he's growing, he's learning new things. He's like any of us when we went to college or high school or just got into the working sector. With Spider-Man dealing with all that, do you think that maybe that's the reason why we feel the presence of too many villains in past Spider-Man movies?
I think so, and Spider-Man works, and Peter Parker, the character, works is because of his dual identity and balancing that in his life. That's what I think Spider-Man 2 did very well, and why it's arguably the best. A lot of people say Spider-Man 2 might be their favorite. I won't say the best. You can't qualify subjectivity like that. But when you look at Spider-Man 2, it was his balancing act. Delivering pizza, trying to go to college, trying to start a relationship, trying to make rent, all the while being Spider-Man. And that's why I think a lot of people love that character, including me growing up and reading those Spider-Man comics, is that you identified with him because he's got to go save the world from Mysterio and also get that term paper in at the same time. So that's fun. That requires a lot of good writing, storytelling, all that kind of stuff. So when you focus on too many villains like it did in Spider-Man 3, it was all about the villains, and you lost out of that charm from Spider-Man 2. And I'm talking the Raimi versions, where you're no longer wondering about Spider-Man and how he's going to make that date with Mary Jane, you're looking at the fact that he just fought Sandman and then Venom's scaling the wall behind him, and then, oh yeah, there's Green Goblin 2 coming in to throw a pumpkin at him. So it's really a balancing act. You bring up some really high standards like The Dark Knight that did it well, that was able to, what I felt, yes, you remember Heath Ledger's Joker, but I also remember a great arc for Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne. I also remember a great arc for Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face. So those are the type of storytelling that you kind of got to look at to really find that balancing act in the screenplay.
The examples you give are when every individual character that's present in that movie is kind of anchored in the same story almost.
Yeah.
I feel like that's when it works more so than, hey, let's have this famous villain pop up in our cold open, but then move on to the meat of the story, but add in a little of this person here. I feel like if they've got that strong core to the overall narrative and can, also thinking about Black Panther and how Michael B. Jordan was working with Andy Serkis. I think that was a good example of how you could have two prominent villains in play, but have it work for both of those characters and make some sense.
Yeah, I feel like fans just don't respond when it comes to comic book movies the same way that you might with like a James Bond movie, which always opens with a big action sequence, and we don't really get any explanation as to what he was doing there in the first place, or we just see him get out of something and just proves he's James Bond, and then we move on with the rest of the movie. That has nothing to do with that. So with this, it's very hard to have one isolated scene where we have a villain that we recognize, but maybe HydroMan is perfect because it's just like HydroMan comes in, we're not really going to miss him if he's not in the rest of the movie, so it'd be an interesting thing to play with. But I have one more question on this topic before we move on, because this is a fun day to, we don't have it's not the biggest headline in the world to just break down, minute by minute, but I think it's interesting to think about Far From Home in the context of whatever we see with Avengers Infinity War 4. Do you think that there's going to be a lot of cleanup in Far From Home based on the events of Avengers, or do you think that Avengers is going to be able to do that by itself?
You want to hope that Avengers 4 can do it by itself and wrap up a bow on what we saw in Infinity War and then move forward into the next phase of the MCU so that we can focus on the character of Spider-Man, where we don't have to grab that loose end and put it in. The only loose end would be the character of Peter Parker, what his life is like after the snap. We obviously know he's going to be coming back, right? He's filming a movie, so we're assuming that a lot of the Avengers that we saw turn to dust will return. But is there something along the lines of when Tony Stark went into the portal at the end of Avengers, and then we spent Iron Man 3 dealing with a PTSD kind of circumstance with Tony Stark? That was fascinating for me. The fallout was the fallout of the character and what the character was doing after. So that's what I want to see. I want to see Peter Parker dealing with what was it like? Was he in the soul gem, like some of the rumors say that instead of dying, he was in soul world? Did he die? What is that like? Is it an alternate reality, an alternate dimension? Is he a clone? Is this the clone? Oh my God, it's the clones. It's the clone. That's what it is. See, I can do it too,
clones.
Internet.
I like that you how you get to the soul world?
The clone saga, yeah.
Take the soul plane. Great movie.
Oh, no,
Perri,
it's not.
do you think that, do you think Avengers Infinity War, and if Infinity War 2 or Avengers 4, whatever you want to call it right now, seals everything up, do we even get a post-credit scene, you think?
Well, okay, wait. Before
In
I even
Avengers
answer
4?
that, I feel like I have to explain my way to that so I can figure out how I'm actually going to process it.
I'm making some more speculation right now.
Okay.
I'm taking one speculation and putting it on another one and another one. I'm thinking about carbs.
Chocolate's in my peanut butter.
I'm with you. I like chocolate and peanut butter, but I also like the whole PTSD angle of Iron Man 3 because, I like the fact that this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's not just one and done and you move on to the next chapter or whatever, the next story. They all connect, and what happened in the past needs to have value also because then you can go back and rewatch a movie and it still has value.
Yeah.
So I don't want them to just wrap up Avengers 4 and have nobody kind of dealing with what just happened. But given rumors on the internet and those sad, sorry paparazzi photos that have been circulating, I've come to the conclusion at this point in my mind that the theory that I think might wind up being the case is the time travel one.
Yeah.
In which case, who would even remember then, If things were reset from a certain point, then we'll get a Tom Holland Spider-Man that's a fresh mind. But that also, to me, even though that seems to be where things are heading, that would have such a loss of interesting material for certain characters.
Yeah.
So I don't want to see that happen. But now I'm stuck in two places where I'm trying to consider where a post-credit scene would come in, and I got nothing for you.
She's got nothing for me. That's what I like doing. Stumbling the panelists around with wild speculation. Well, there's been a lot of chatter in the chat room right now. You guys are watching us live. We appreciate the support. Marcus Stoudemire simply says Sinister Six. And I think, maybe a lot of people leaning towards that if indeed HydroMan or other villains get announced to be in the movie. Paul Gibbons says could be an indie-like beginning adventure where it's like, got to battle HydroMan, take care of HydroMan, and we're on with our day. And then a disturbing trend happening in the chat room right now is one person says that Ellis, Dylan Tilley says Ellis looks like he wants Reilly to sign his baseball card. So if you could go ahead and do that, and then
I have a baseball card,
No.
or no, you. So
Like,
I
you sign his baseball card.
You want my autograph?
Yeah.
I will take that.
And
because usually the other way around, whenever Mark Ellis walks in the studio, Mr. Ellis, he usually throws me his jersey and I throw him a Coke.
not today, Mean Joe. Not today. We move on to our next story, and this is centered around Aladdin. Well, we talked about some cool Mulan news. That is officially under production. They're shooting it. We got our first image of Louis Yifei. And now with Aladdin, we're going to get some new songs from the La La Land songwriters and Alan Menken. Alan Menken, you guys probably are aware, did some of the music for the first iteration of Aladdin in the early 90s. It was Alan Menken, Howard Ashman, and Tim Rice. They did some of the biggest hits that you know from Aladdin, like One Jump Ahead, Friend Like Me, Prince Ali, and A Whole New World. The Guy Ritchie live-action version of this that is going to star Mina Mossad as Aladdin, Naomi Scott as Jasmine, and Will Smith as the Genie, amongst other notable castings in there. It's going to have some of those original songs. I think that's kind of what Disney is sticking to when they do their live-action work, is we want to get the nostalgia from the animated movies that people fell in love with in the first place, but we want to add some new things. That is also happening right now. So it's going to be Benji Pasek and Justin Paul from your Scott Manson's favorite anyway, La La Land, and then Alan Menken. They're adding some new things. They got a new song for Jasmine in there. Alan Menken wrote some stuff. They have a duet for Aladdin and Jasmine. So they're redoing some of the music. They're keeping a lot of it. Perry, do you like the play here? Do you think that it's too much of the old, not enough of the new? Do we need new music at all?
I'm trying not to be too precious about it because Aladdin is one of my favorite of all the classic Disney animated movies, and my mind keeps going back to Beauty and the Beast. So I liked that, but there was that original song that they made for the movie, and that is hands down the least memorable part of the entire movie. So I don't necessarily think we need it, but I don't want to just keep going to that and saying, oh, it's hopeless, don't add more music. Maybe it was just that particular song, and I love La La Land, and I've got a whole lot of faith in them. I mean, look at what happened with Greatest Showman last year. So if anyone could write some music that could meet the original standards, I would think it would be the two of them. But I think with more and more of these Disney live action adaptations that have come out over the years, I think I've grown to like the more faithful adaptations a little bit more. And normally I'm all for creative and taking chances and not kind of copying and pasted what worked before. But I think the idea of bringing these to screen in live action form is so magical enough to me that I just want to maintain the purity of the story and the music as it was before.
Yeah, Reilly, it's a tough balance, and I think it's a balance that many veteran rock bands have when they go on tour. It's how much of our new album do we play? How much do fans want to hear the new stuff, or is that just what we play when they need to go to the bathroom or go get another beer? Because you have the hits that people expect, and that's kind of what these movies are in a way, is that they're huge nostalgia trips. There's so much new because it's live action, you have new talent and all that stuff, but if you keep the music, you're keeping the spirit of the movie. Or do you think that we just get one song? Like if you just have A Whole New World and then everything else is new, what's the right approach here?
I think the approach is you have all those songs that you grew up with that you were so nostalgic for, Perry, and I as well. I love Aladdin. Aladdin was a fixture of that summer it came out in high school for me, that I went and saw it quite a bit and fell in love with that music. But it's nice to get the La La Land writers to come in and add to it. And because I think that's the balancing act, is that you can't take out anything because you kind of expect these songs that you grew up with. But you can certainly add some more to flesh out character through song. And I know that they said they're adding some stuff for Jasmine.
The Jasmine song.
Yeah, they're adding a Jasmine song, which I think is right on the money because Jasmine only had a duet with Aladdin, while Aladdin, being the central character and the name of the movie, had, the got to keep one step ahead of the breadline song at the beginning, and Prince Ali and all these different songs that were his character. I love that we're getting a new one. I love that they're adding in another verse for the Arabian Nights, which was the beginning of the movie that introduced Robin Williams at the time, playing that little guy that was selling stuff at the beginning of the movie.
That was really interesting to me. I'm glad you brought that up. Is that they're adding a new verse to Arabian Nights? So
and they
is
had
that the way you go going forward?
Well, they also, if you remember this, for the actual movie, they had to change some lyrics at one point for the actual movie because there was some stuff that was brought in about the culture there that was a little too much, where you're going to lose your hand or something like that. And they're like, for a Disney movie, we'll change that, which they did. But I like, yes, adding that to the opening of the movie, which makes me think that they're expanding this song so that we're going to get a very big, nice set piece to introduce the world and the mythology and what this movie's going to look like. But I'm all for adding more songs to it. But yeah, we've fallen into a trap with Beauty and the Beast, at least, where they write a new song and you're like, it doesn't sound like the movie I grew up with. But then I think of the stage play. They added a song for the stage play for Beast, and it is gorgeous. It is amazing.
You've seen the stage play for
I've seen the stage play for Beauty and the Beast, and the song that the Beast does just by himself on the top of the castle, they played some of the music in the movie. And I went, oh, they're gonna do that song. And rightly so, they should do that song. It's beautiful. And nope, they didn't do it. They only used a few refrains of the song that was from that stage play. So
the old Danny Elfman tease with the original Batman.
Exactly. They do that, and I'm like, and again, the stage play for The Lion King gave a song to Mufasa called They Live in You, which is when he's singing to Simba about being a king and what that means. All the former kings live in you, and this gorgeous song that was for the play. I'm hoping that shows up in the live action movie. I don't know if they are or not. That's where I think they can really benefit by expanding the music if it's really good. Why not use it from the play? I don't know why they can't. I don't know why they did it for Beauty and the Beast, but that's a long-winded excuse. I love the fact that they're going to write more music for this. I think it's worthy of it.
If I give you all your favorite Disney score, because we were talking earlier this week about Lady and the Tramp and how I think it's an underrated Disney movie as far as the classics go, and I think it's the right movie to kick off Disney's streaming service with, because that movie is going to be available exclusively on the streaming service. Just go with score, and everybody at home play along. What is the best Disney animated movie score?
Score, easy. Lion King, Hans Zimmer.
Okay.
I was going to say Lion King.
Beautiful.
Okay. What songs stand out the most from any movie?
From any movie. Well, Hans Zimmer, I mean, obviously Elton John wrote the lyrics and some of the music, but Hans Zimmer's score, when you're like after Circle of Life, and it starts to play this music that shows the Serengeti and shows all the animals waking up, and then it cuts over to Simba. There's some music that's playing that has some vocals in it. There's like, ooh, doo, doo, and it's like epic. It's just, it feels, it like comes into your bones and you're like, oh, it's beautiful. It just makes you feel like you're a part of that world. And hey, and that's a Little Mermaid thing.
There it is.
You need it there.
Woo! That's a good score too. But yeah, The Lion King, I love it.
Okay, Perri, you agreeing with The Lion King?
I think I would have to choose The Lion King. I mean, when I say Aladdin is one of my favorites, Lion King is the favorite. And, growing up, it was the perfect age. And, that's another thing with adding certain songs. And you bring up a good point with The Lion King on Broadway, because I think it worked really well then.
Yeah.
It's just, I wonder if, and, this isn't really fair to the filmmakers, but as a lover of these movies, because especially when they hit at the right age and you're watching and rewatching, it beat for beat. So no matter how good something is, when a new beat slips in there, it's going to feel jarring at first.
Yeah.
So, you have a much steeper uphill climb to make people appreciate that if they know every little thing. So I don't know, that's why I do suspect that with Aladdin in particular, that might bother me a little, but if they rise to the occasion like they have with the other films on their resume, then there shouldn't be a problem.
I'm just really excited, might be too strong of a word, but very curious to see what Guy Ritchie does with this movie.
Yeah.
To see look, the big question on everybody's mind is going to be, how is Will Smith's Genie different, or how does it stack up against Robin Williams' Genie? And people, look, I'm a huge Robin Williams fan. I love him as the Genie. I'm excited to see what Will Smith can do. I want to see what that character is like and how that character is different, not just within this live action, but because Will Smith isn't going to be doing all the impressions and all the characters that Robin did. Maybe he'll do some of that stuff, but I want to see how this Genie's different.
Yeah, I do too. And it's an uphill battle for him, I know, because Robin Williams, God bless him, he became kind of synonymous for this role at one point, and then Good Will Hunting kind of maybe surpassed that at one point. But but with the animation, he could do that. You could let Robin Williams off the chain. That great behind the scenes video where it's just like, just go in that booth, Robin. And he just went, and the animators are like, okay, we got a lot to work with. I think Will Smith can do his version and do something that might be a little bit more, I don't know what the word is when you're talking live action. I'm sure there's still going to be, I don't know if he's a mocap character, if he's performing like an Andy Serkis would as Gollum or Caesar, or if it's going to be all computer generated and he just walks into a booth. So that's going to be, that would literally change the way I would come at this, because if he's on set with them, I think that we could see his version that might have a little bit of improv, but I can't wait too. I am curious. I think he's a fantastic performer and funny in his own right, that we have the chance to have a different version of the Genie in live action.
And he knows his way around music, Perri.
He does.
That he does. I'm pretty happy. They had to cast that role with someone, and I've got faith that Will Smith can pull it off. But even more than just whatever they wind up doing for how we see the character in the final film, whether it's mocap, live action, whatever, just the idea of the entire thing being done Guy Ritchie style, because on the surface, I just equate the Aladdin that I knew and loved with what Guy Ritchie's movies normally look like. And they don't quite blend like I would like them to, but, he's a very capable, experienced filmmaker. I imagine they picked him because there's something about his style that works for what they want, but he'll have to adapt his skill set a little too. So this is one of those instances where I'm really, really eager to see that first cast photo.
Yeah, well, as my grandpappy always used to say, if you're going to cast a Genie, you don't have to get to Robin Williams. Just try to be between Robin and Kazam, and you'll do just fine. Is it Kazam or Shazam? I think it was in fact Kazam. All right, I'm going to remind you guys that this show is brought to you by our friends at Rode Microphones. Rode Microphones has a really cool contest right now called My Rode Reel. So they had a bunch of filmmakers submit a 3-minute short film in any genre they wanted, and they also made a quick behind-the-scenes version that just shows them using some sort of Rode product, like these microphones we have in the studio. So now you can go to myrodereel.com and vote on your favorite short film that was created in this contest. The winner is going to get a portion of the $1 million prize purse that is currently available. So once again, check out our buddies Rode Microphones and all the cool short films that some of you might have submitted at myrodereel.com. Well, starting next week, Monday to be exact, 10 a.m. PST to be super exact, we are kicking off our new show, Collider Alive. It's going to be hosted by Christian Harloff and a host of others. I'll be popping in there from time to time, as well as a lot of people in and outside the world of Collider. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We might start with movies and go. We might start somewhere completely different. It's going to be a different kind of morning show, different kind of experience for Collider viewers, and I think that you guys are really going to enjoy it. That's going to be every Monday through Wednesday, 10 a.m. PST is when it kicks off. And we have a lot of new channels around the Collider parts right now. You probably already subscribed to Collider Video. That's how you're watching us here today. But we also have Collider Games, Collider Sports, Collider Quick, and new wrestling content as well. All the links to those new platforms are in the description of this vid. Well, let's move on to our next story. This is going to be a fun one because I'm going to present the topic to Mark Reilly and Perri Nemiroff. Then they're going to have to sell me on why I should be excited about Wes Anderson's new project. This is by a report in Sud-Ouest, I believe. That's not the last French pronunciation I'm going to butcher in this story, is that Wes Anderson is going to start rolling cameras on a new project in France in February of 2019, aiming for a 2020 release date. So we don't have a title yet or a cast, but we're looking at this being set just after World War II and it's going to be a musical. So obviously Wes Anderson's musical stylings have been showcased heavily in his work over the years. This particular film takes place in a part of France that is known for your Anderson-esque settings that have, you got your ramparts overlooking the city and the river that the region is named for, a city hall that's got a lot of greenery, a lot of nice, freshly preserved old town kind of feel. Perfect setting for Wes Anderson. So Mark Reilly, why is old curmudgeon-y popcorn movie loving Mark Ellis going to get excited about this new Wes Anderson post-World War II musical?
Well, let me ask you something. Did you like Royal Tenenbaums?
Not seen the picture yet.
How about Rushmore?
Not seen the picture yet.
Okay, I'm your new host for Movie Talk, Mark Reilly, and today on today's show we have Wes Anderson with a new movie, because get the hell out of here with yourself.
I'll see myself out.
Life Aquatic, Darjeeling Limited, Moonrise Kingdom, Fantastic Mr. Fox, The Isle of Dogs, which I just watched, which is phenomenally brilliant.
I have seen I Love Dogs.
Did you like that?
I did. And,
Okay.
And I've seen Life Aquatic, and I've seen...
Did you like Life
Darjeeling
Aquatic?
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't see Moonrise Kingdom?
Yeah.
Moonrise Kingdom.
That's my favorite. You should watch that one.
I've heard some other people say they hated it. It's weird.
Moonrise Kingdom?
Yeah.
It's not my favorite Wes Anderson. My favorite Wes Anderson is either Rushmore or Royal Tenenbaums. Royal Tenenbaums might be actually my favorite. It is that movie I adore.
Okay.
So with this, just add his take, who Wes Anderson is as a filmmaker, his quirky humor, his in-depth characters, his quirky music choices. Now add some musical to it. Paris, France after World War II. Bill Murray's in this thing. He's going to be in it. Jason Schwartzman is probably going to be in it. Owen Wilson is probably going to be in it. We're already talking about a cast that's going to be phenomenal. Yes, you should be excited from this. But in order to get truly excited, you have to go see Royal Tenenbaums. You have to go see Rushmore, Moonrise Kingdom, Darjeeling Limited. These are some Hotel Budapest. That is another phenomenal. Did you see that one?
I did not see Grand
Hotel.
Budapest.
Grand Budapest, yeah, Hotel Budapest. Grand Budapest Hotel. These movies are just, Wes Anderson is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time.
Okay.
And I think when you tell me it's going to be a period piece, which most of his movies feel period if they're not. Most of them are not. They're set in today's world, but they feel period. They feel like the snapshot in time. So you add that sensibility to a period piece, post-World War II, in France, with some music. I don't even know what this guy is thinking about. Original music, what kind of musical it will be. I don't know how you can't be excited. This is phenomenal.
The interesting thing to me is that, Perri, this is going to be the first time, because obviously his music in the movies that I've seen, from what I've heard from people who've seen the Royal Tenenbaums and such, is that the music plays a heavy role in it. But this is the first time that it's considered a musical where the music is going to be driving the action. How do you think it's going to fare?
Good for him. I want to see him kind of jump into that territory, do something new, because his movies are already full of so much life and color and colorful characters. I mean, really, that would have been my pitch to you, is pretty much what Reilly said. Take, even if you haven't seen all of his movies, take any movie that you've seen of his, and apply it to the musical form. And that immediately, even though I have no clue what this thing is really going to be about, the second you pair Wes Anderson style with the musical idea, I'm already sold. And also because with his movies, it's pretty much a given that you're going to get certain people. So, if Tilda Swinton and Jeff Goldblum are on the lineup, including the many, many others he tends to bring back again and again, I am all for it. The only little wrench I'll throw into this is that the musical element of this hasn't been confirmed yet. So at the moment, it is still just a rumor. But I don't know. That sounds like a strange rumor to just pop up out of nowhere and have no validity to it.
Yeah, and as much as we give some guff to maybe non-professional singers who performed in recent musicals like Les Miserables or the Mamma Mia movie, it is fun to watch famous people that you know and love attempt stuff like this and have some fun with it. So if that is how this movie is approaching it, I'm going to be intrigued. And I'm also, I can't let the story go without trying to pronounce the name of the French area. It's called the Balcony of the Southwest. And I'm going to go with
Balcony du Southwest.
Angoulême.
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 I like andouille sausage. And that's all for that story. Wes Anderson, possibly a musical, post-World War II in La France. We move on to our last story, but not before I remind you guys, at the end of this show, we're going to save some time for your live Twitter questions. Go ahead and start tweeting us right now at Collider Video. Use that hashtag Collider Movie Talk. And this one is all about Slenderman. So might be some mild spoilers if you haven't seen Slenderman yet in theaters and you plan on watching Slenderman for some weird reason, according to Perri Nemiroff. Now, the movie, the Screen Gems release was a PG-13 movie, and now a report via Bloody Disgusting is saying that Screen Gems, this is a Sony faction, never really got behind Slenderman, and so kind of a light release as far as publicity and promotional stuff goes, and also that several scenes were cut from the film. One of the reasons is because they feared public backlash, because one of the father of one of the girls who was involved in the actual 2014 Slenderman stabbing criticized the film for being extremely distasteful and popularizing a tragedy. And there are also some pretty intense sequences that they cut to get that PG-13 rating, which I guess they thought would help them with business. Perri Nemiroff, it seems like if you're going to release a movie called Slenderman and it's going to be based on the 2014 pretty recent true story, how would any more gratuitous violence or scenes that were supposedly one of the several major ones that got cut, how can it be more distasteful and more popularizing a tragedy? We're releasing a movie called Slenderman. Isn't that popularizing the tragedy already?
I think there was only one way to do this semi-appropriately, and it was to make a Slenderman movie that focused more on what creepypasta is and the nature of a communal story coming to life on the internet and believability. There was a way to go about it in a more thoughtful way rather than your typical surface level, slasher or boogeyman type story where you watch a group of friends get picked off one by one. I think there was something more here that could have actually left you with something to think about, but instead, I don't like giving any kind of bad names to horror movies out there, but this is the definition of a horror cash grab to me, where it is just it's so surface level and there's really nothing to it. And this story was a major issue in sitting there and watching the full feature, because this isn't like a light, like, oh, the studio interfered. There were major chunks of this movie that were removed, and one of the biggest ones, Haley points it out in her piece that she wrote up, one of the biggest ones was, at one point, they take someone's laptop in the movie, and they say it, and then in the next scene, the laptop's there. There's also, there's one character that comes to mind that is introduced, is affected by the Slenderman legend, and then is never revisited ever again, and if you go see Slenderman, not that I'm recommending it, obviously, but then go watch that first trailer, there are two particularly gory scenes that come to mind, one of which would have explained what happened to a major character in the movie had it been left in. But all that being said, I'm not saying, oh, they should have left those scenes. I think all of this is just a shining example of why someone should have pushed the big red pause button well in advance of this movie ever going into production. This was a big fat bad idea from the start, and it never should have been made.
Well, it sounds like you love the movie. You saw it, and you can clearly notice that there's major scenes that were missing. And Reilly, you hear about either reshoots or certain scenes have to be cut for time or whatever studio's reasoning may be, or a director or editor for that matter, but rarely do we notice them.
Yeah.
As much as it appears we notice them in Slenderman. So, and I see a lot of people mentioning this in the comment section. So that's kind of the question I want to spin to you is, people lose faith in the horror genre when you hear about stuff like this happening. What does this do? What does a story like this do to horror fans who want to get excited about movies like this, but you just can't trust the studio backing it?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at studios for their history on how they treat a particular brand or IP that, Sony and Screen Gems, I don't know some of the, off the top of my head, some of the movies that they've done in the past, but and I know it's hard, we do this for a living, so we are pretty aware of the behind the scenes stuff because we report on Movie Talk. So leading up to this, to Perri's point, every point she made, this thing was just doomed to fail from the start. not only because of the controversy, but because of the studio meddling. Then some of the producers wanted to do a wider release, and Sony was like, no, so they started to sue each other. So there was zero marketing, and then all of a sudden they figured it out. They released it. It bombs.
It didn't bomb.
No, it didn't bomb.
Didn't
That's
bomb.
right. But it bombs critically, I should say.
Oh, yeah. And with viewers, it's a D- on CinemaScore.
D- with
too.
CinemaScore, so I don't think people are going to be going back to this thing. I know I didn't go seek it out because, one, I agree, there is a tragedy to this movie. And I think that the right thing to do in that point is that they're looking at Slenderman and seeing the next Pennywise or Freddy Krueger. And I think they should have looked at Slenderman is, to your point, a cautionary tale of what a story can do and how it can take on a shape of its own online. There's a bigger story there. There's a bigger, deeper horror movie in there somewhere, and it's the execution. So I wouldn't be, horror movies, you could take any kind of idea, true or otherwise. The horror genre gets butts in the seats. That's what I think. I think that you can go in and just want to be scared, whether it's The Strangers, that's a very simple story of home invasion. Put some masks on them, do some good character work, and you have a good horror movie. This, I wouldn't worry about horror movies being, off because of this. We're going to have, look at Rings. Rings comes out and bombs. And Paramount goes, no more Friday the 13th. And you're like, really? I mean, just because of that? I get it. You got to worry about these things.
Well, that to me seems like a good reaction because
they were rushing. Oh, I read that script too.
That's them
Especially
hitting
in this case,
the big red button that Perry's
yes.
alluding to is stopping.
But It Chapter 2 is not going to hit pause because of Slenderman, right? Because we know It is huge. We're not going to. The Nun is not going to stop itself from coming into theaters. We're not going to not get a Annabelle 3 anymore because of Slenderman. This is a very specific case that has nothing to do with, I think it has a little to do with the true story aspect of it. This has everything to do with a studio and producers that didn't know what they had, that didn't treat it with respect, that were going for a cash grab, that were hoping to create another Pennywise and hoping to create another It movie where they get all this money and based on a true story, that's even better. It's scary. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre based on a true story, somewhat. So it's like you had to figure out what the story is you're trying to tell. And so when you walk into a movie and characters that are introduced and then disappear and are never revisited, even an audience member, I'm sure, could go, wait a minute, something's not right here. And it shows in the critical drubbing it's receiving and the D+, D-.
D-.
Ooh, almost failing there. Yeah, so you're going to see it there. And it's because of the execution.
All right, I'm sorry you guys didn't like it.
I didn't see it.
Do whatever you want to do.
I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see it because, one, I thought the marketing was awful and the behind-the-scenes stuff. And this is what I do in movies now. When Perri Nemiroff, my fellow horror movie buff, goes, you know what? I'm not going to waste the money.
You send her to the front lines.
I did.
Just the same
I
thing
sent her Operation
my whole
Get
family
Behind
to the front
Perri.
lines.
Oh,
Nobody liked it. It went 0 for 4 with the Nemiroff family.
This is the Nemiroff family movie?
We went, yeah.
Wow.
When I went to New York, that's what our Saturday night out was.
All right. Well, hi, Nemiroff. We'll send Dewey in Perry's place next time, and maybe Dewey can select
They
a
would
better movie
appreciate that.
for the family to watch. Well, I want to remind you guys that, there's some big horror fans here, and there's also big fans of podcasting, and two of them are sitting to my immediate left. Perri has her show, The Witching Hour, which is all about horror and genre. Really interesting stuff there. And then Mark Reilly has the Reilly Roundtable, which I saw your studio, and I saw your guest that you had in said studio today.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I think the kids have something to get excited about with the next Reilly Roundtable.
I think so. Mr. Ken Knapsack stops by, and
Heard of him.
We went deep, and it's not. And everybody, and I said this on the show, which is being edited now. I'm like, everybody thought we were going to talk about Star Wars or maybe Game of Thrones. No. I'll just say that. It's a good episode. I'm very excited.
All right. Has Ken Knapsack ever been abducted by aliens? You're going to have to find out and tune into the Reilly Roundtable.
Turns out, no.
He is not. He may be an alien himself, though, which kind of counts. So you guys can check out all of our different podcast feeds. We have Collider Factory. That's a nice hub to start. And then we also have the Movie Talk feed, Collider Movie Talk. You can get this show as a podcast. You also get Perry's show Mailbag on the weekends. And you also get Afterthoughts hosted by Ryan and Jay. Hope those gentlemen are doing well and that Jay's not too busy with work, meaning that Ryan is somehow back from his vacation to the Gulf of Mexico. I believe he was parasailing Hope you did well, buddy. All right, we move on to our live Twitter questions, and our first one comes from our buddy Luis A. Rivera, one of my favorite Twitter handles of all time, at shit. And he says, well, summer is over, guys. Not yet, Luis. We got a couple of weeks. But he says, so besides Avengers, what was your favorite movie of the summer of 2018?
8th grade.
Okay.
I think that was my favorite. The 8th grade, I think Incredibles 2 was following pretty close behind. And actually, now that I'm making a list, so was Mission Impossible Fallout. But of those three, 8th grade definitely tops it. If you haven't seen it yet, I cannot recommend that one enough.
All right, Reilly, Perri Nemiroff, she's using her ability to get on the front lines and move before us.
So I have taken all of those. You can't pick any of them now.
I'm going to shock you all and say Slenderman was my favorite. Incredibles 2 was my other favorite after Avengers because it just was so much fun. But I'm with you too. Fallout was fantastic, but one that a lot of people are talking about, Mr. Rogers. Oh, Will You Be My Neighbor? That's a summer movie that came out for me. Oh, wow. I finally, oh my God. I didn't know I could cry that hard.
Really?
Have you seen it yet? Yeah.
I knew you could cry that hard.
Yeah.
No, I know. I've not seen the Mr. Rogers documentary.
Yeah,
yet.
you got to see it. We finally caught it at the last moment and before it's going out of theaters.
There it is. There it is. The Waterworks.
Yeah.
That run throughout the Reilly household. I am going to say my favorite piece of footage that I watched from a movie in the summer 2018. Finally watched the Godzilla King of Monsters trailer. Whew, boy, that is going to be fun.
I can't wait for that movie.
Is going to be
that trailer
exciting.
Was awesome.
Yeah, but if we're not going trailers, going actual feature-length films, I'm probably going to say BlacKkKlansman is my favorite movie of the summer.
Wow.
So far, I mean, I'm trying to think of all the other ones. So Perri makes a good point. Mission Impossible Fallout was a lot of fun. Didn't love it quite as much as the previous two in the franchise. But yeah, Deadpool 2 is really good. I like Solo. We'll move on before we get more chat room banter about that. Better Call Maul, and it's at Fed Unchained, so you can't escape the universe too far. He says, there hasn't been any Hellboy news, and it's coming out against What Men Want and Glass early next year. Do you think the movie blew an opportunity by not releasing a trailer or some footage at Comic-Con?
I did think they were going to have somewhat of a presence at Comic-Con. That was, as we were kind of prepping our lineup before they actually announced the schedule, that was penciled in there on my little notepad, and then
they already had David Harbour there,
I know, why not? I mean, that seems like the perfect time and place to kick something off, especially when, it's Comic-Con. That's where you kick off a run for a brand like that. And, we're definitely hitting a time where January used to be seen as a dumping ground, but, the first week of January can be very profitable, especially for horror films. And now the last 2 weekends of January, some movies have made a significant amount of money, and Glass is going to be a lot of competition. So I hope they get things into gear sooner rather than later, because they've got some ground to make up now.
Yeah, I don't really see that as like being a counter programming kind of thing. I think that it's going to be the Venn diagram overlaps pretty heavily between fan interest in Hellboy and fan interest in Glass. I mean, the counter programming that weekend is going to be What Men Want, starring Taraji P. Henson. So, Reilly, do you think that Hellboy should move off that date? Do you think that they just need to start ramping up a trailer and commercial?
Yeah, we should. I mean, that question comes in, and I immediately went to that first look of David Harbour, and I'm like, where have they been? It just I don't know what you call it. I mean, it slipped my mind, but it's because there's nothing. It's been crickets. And so, yes, they absolutely missed an opportunity. Comic-Con is their bread and butter. That's not only the movie crowd, but the comic sweaties, the ones that go there to get the Hellboy comics. That, like, you want to have that.
Another thought, though, maybe they're waiting for New York Comic-Con, because
they're gonna. And I bet you're right.
When we were covering the Meg, and I was talking about that piece that I read about their promotional campaign, one of the points that I read was that they had considered doing something for it at Comic-Con, but that Warner Brothers didn't want to be one of many. They wanted the spotlight. So maybe they're thinking, because not as many big properties go to New York Comic-Con, so maybe they could make a bigger opening splash to the campaign there. But just an idea.
No, you speak some good reason. I think that's probably important, and maybe they'll do that because, I don't know, Hellboy, everybody wanted a part 3 Hellboy from Del Toro. We're getting a reboot. That's great. Hard R, Neil Marshall. I'm all for it. I like this cast. I would have loved to see maybe a sneak peek, maybe a trailer, and then do a huge presence, scenes and whatnot over at New York. But if they do that, they need to get on it because we are coming up. I don't know. It's really hard to say. Will Glass give it a run for its money? I don't know.
I'd move off the Glass.
I tend to agree with you. I think you might want to move off that weekend because Glass has the extra benefit now of being connected to Unbreakable and was so shocking when Split came out that it became that universe. Now they had a Comic-Con presence. That hype is going to be through the roof. So I would probably move off too.
All right. One more question, then we're going to call it a day. And the honor goes to Sean Hood at Hoodsy94. Says, what superhero movie do you think has the best score? What superhero movie of all time has your favorite score in it? Reilly, you're smiling. You're looking in my direction. I have a feeling I know which way you're leaning. I have a feeling Johnny Williams might have been composing it. I have a feeling you may have walked into a couple Schmoedown rings in your day listening to this theme. Is it the Superman?
It's Superman.
Okay.
It's my favorite superhero score, not only for the obvious reasons of the Superman theme, but Lois Lane's theme is beautiful. Krypton, going into Krypton when he's leaving home. It's actually called Leaving Home. Is some of the best music when Clark decides to go walk the earth and build the Fortress of Solitude, says goodbye to his mom. That music is amazing. Everything about that score, it's one of the best superhero scores. But I will give some credit to some of the later scores out there. Hans Zimmer's Dark Knight score is phenomenal. Alan Silvestri's score for Captain America First Avenger and the Avengers is beautiful. And I love the original Thor score by Patrick Doyle.
Wow.
It's so beautiful. That's a great MCU addition that they finally got it, and they finally brought that Thor theme back to Ragnarok at the very end where he assumes the throne on the spaceship.
All right, Perri, I thought you took a lot of summer movies. Reilly took a lot of the good scores there.
Yeah,
He's pretty confident in his answers.
He didn't take the first two things that came to mind.
Nice.
And, I think those are all great scores. But, when I have to pick the greatest, in my opinion, it's the ones that I happen to listen to the most often. And if I could just do soundtrack for a minute, it would be the Guardians soundtrack, the one for the first movie. I listened to it on repeat. But then the Batman 89 score, that one will always, not just transport me back into the movie, but transport me back into just that feeling of sitting there and watching it so beautifully. And awesome. I just love when that kicks in.
All right, yeah, I would go with both Batman 1989 and Superman 1978. I also love, and it's not just for the MC Hammer that you get in the first Ninja Turtles movie, but some of this, the actual score of the Ninja Turtles movie, it gives me the vibes you're talking about.
I share those the Ninja Turtle vibes too.
It's great, man. And then they released their own cassette tape in cooperation with Pizza Hut.
That's right.
And it wasn't, I remember the Turtles were going to be on Oprah. And my brother and I were so excited to see, the Ninja Turtles from the movie, they're going to be on Oprah. And Oprah introduces, I don't know who the hell these four turtles were. They were not the Ninja Turtles. They were just four weird looking turtles with creepy
felt
spot, like liver spots all over them. They were not a healthy turtles. They looked like turtles that had seen what had happened to the Ninja Turtles. Like, hey, just dump a bunch of mutant gin on me and let's see what happens. And it wasn't good.
It reminds me when my mom took us to see The Incredible Hulk that was doing an appearance at a Mervin's. And we were waiting for this is the 70s show, in the 80s. We're waiting for a dude, and it's a guy in a big felt suit, and my mom's like, that's not the Incredible Hulk, this is ridiculous, we're leaving. And I'm like, way to go, Mom.
I would like to talk to your mom to see what she was expecting.
She was expecting a guy
like Lou Ferrigno?
like Lou Ferrigno. Yeah.
All right.
We got a guy that looked like Mickey Mouse, the felt costumes, and that was the Incredible Hulk. And I'm like, that's not the Incredible Hulk. It was like it's the day my childhood died.
Hey, Mervins, you gave it a shot. Pizza Hut, stop making Ninja Turtle cassettes and stick to giving away what you give away best, misshapen NCAA basketballs. Well, that is going to do it for us here today. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Collider Movie Talk. My name is merely Mark Ellis, but really the heroes of this show are the production crew who we don't get to see, so I'm not going to say their names either. I'm going to say the names of my great panelists, and that would be Perri Nemiroff and Mark Reilly. Thank you guys for joining me here today, and let's all wave to the production guy. Hi, Adam.
You rock, Adam.
Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.